Right, good morning, grade 12. The focus of today's lesson is the state of the environment. Specifically, we are going to be looking at pollution. Right, in your textbook, this is on page 127, I think. Okay, now if we look at the state of the environment, basically we are going to look at how healthy is our environment and where are the pressures on the environment coming from. Right, how can we preserve the state of environment? How can we keep our environment healthy? Now, first of all, our environment, our natural environment is under pressure because human claims on the environment are more than what nature can provide for on a long-term basis. Right. So basically, it is not sustainable. We are taking more out of the environment than what is sustainable. If we continue our exploitation of nature, it means that future generations will not have access to a healthy environment. Right. Now, why is this? Why is our human claims more than what the environment can handle? First of all, there's increasing population numbers, right? Obviously, the more people there are on Earth, the bigger the claims on the environment is going to be. We have to plant more food. We have to build more houses, destroying the environment in the process. We consume more food. We exploit more resources to feed all of the increasing population numbers. All right. So specifically, this is because of the high birth rates in developing countries. There are certain developing countries, emerging economies, where the population growth rates are very high, countries that are extremely overpopulated. All right, now nature only has the ability to cater for a certain amount of people, and the more people there are on the planet, obviously the more resources we are going to consume. And then the second problem is overconsumption, okay, excessive consumption. The caloric food intake, people in developed countries are basically eating 30% more than what nature can provide for on a sustainable basis. All right. We are no longer just eating to stay alive. We are eating for pleasure. Now we are eating more than what we should be eating to be healthy. All right. That's why there's internationally a very big obesity problem. People are overweight because of excessive consumption. We are eating resources faster than what nature can provide them. All right, then pressure on the environment is also caused by pollution. As I said, that is going to be the focus of this lesson specifically. Okay, specifically, we're going to talk about the different kinds of pollution, all right? But specifically, air pollution is creating a lot of havoc with climate change, etc., etc. Okay, with the CFCs, lead poisoning, CO2 emissions, all of this is creating air pollution, right? There's also pressure in terms of the water usage. Again, the more people there are, the more water we consume, and water is a scarce resource. Now, we cannot create water. We have to wait for nature to create more water through rainfall. All right. There's also toxic emissions from industry, okay, chemicals that is being dumped by different industries. In their production process, they're producing dangerous chemicals, hazardous waste generation. Okay, we're going to talk about all of this in detail. Energy production and usage, obviously, in most of the developed countries, when we are using energy to generate electricity, for example, we are burning fossil fuels. And that is problematic because it creates a large amount of air pollution. Okay, agricultural pollution. Okay, also because we overconsume cattle, now we eat a lot of meat. As income levels increase, more people are eating more meat, and also the waste of the cattle is actually it's baking in the sun. It causes methane gas to be released. That also creates pollution. So the more cattle we breed and the more cattle we have on the planet, the more pollution we are contributing to. Right, we also have the problem of overfishing, where we don't just fish for consumption. People take more fishes out of the ocean than what we can handle on a sustainable basis. Now, obviously, when we fish, we should leave the young fishies in the water so they can create more fishies for the future. All right. So overfishing means that we are catching large amounts of fish and removing them from the ocean. So we are not leaving enough fishies behind to create more fishies for the future. All right. Deforestation, when we chop down all the trees, okay, to make paper and whatever, that is also very harmful to the environment because trees basically turns CO2 gas, harmful CO2 gas, back into oxygen that is released to clean the air. So obviously, if we chop down all the trees, we are creating air pollution indirectly. There's soil erosion, okay, that comes as a result of overgrazing, basically, when the soil dies, basically. Okay, soil erosion is when the soil dies. When, for example, a piece of land is overgrazed and nothing will ever grow there again. Yeah, the grass is all eaten, it's trampled by the cattle grazing on the soil. Or we plant and we plant and we plant and we plant and we don't fertilize the soil. All the nutrients basically in the soil is being removed, and the soil basically then dies, which means nothing is ever going to grow there again. All right. We also obviously create waste in terms of municipal waste, okay, things like the plastic, right? So we basically create a lot of waste. The packaging that we throw away, the boxes that stuff comes in, food and stuff that we dispose of, anything that the municipality comes and fetches basically once a week, that is municipal waste. And then as well as the sewage generation. The more we consume, the more sewage we generate. The sewage, when we flush the toilet, we don't think of the sewage again, but the sewage, we need to do something with it. It has to go somewhere, it has to be cleaned up, it has to be disposed of somewhere. So the more sewage there is, obviously the more pressure we are placing on the environment. Okay, so the activities of people puts demands on the natural environment in two ways. Okay, there's both inputs and outputs, right? Nature obviously provides us the inputs for us to stay alive. Everything, remember, any production process starts with raw materials that comes from nature. So the source of anything that we consume comes from nature. So nature provides us the resources that we need to produce the goods and services that we consume to stay alive, right, and create jobs for people in the processing of the natural resources. All right, so nature provides us with the inputs, the resources that we need to stay alive, for our consumption, for us to start businesses with, etc., etc. And then in terms of outputs, obviously, any living and working activities of people results in a certain amount of waste that has to be disposed of, whether it is municipal waste, whether it's human waste like sewage, it has to be disposed of somewhere. And remember, we use nature as a place, that we use it as a source of raw materials, but we also use it as a place to dump all of our waste. All right. So when we look at the state of environment, as I said, the first thing that we're going to look at in detail is pollution. All right, so what is pollution? There's your definition. Obviously, you can highlight this in your textbook, all right, because that is a definition. Obviously, that is important. All definitions are important. So what is pollution? It is the act of introducing a toxic substance into the environment that is dangerous to human health and can potentially damage the ecosystem. All right, so any foreign substance that we are going to introduce into the environment, any non-natural substance that we're introducing into the environment that can be potentially harmful to human health and is damaging the ecosystem, that is pollution. All right. Now, pollution is a byproduct of human and economic activity. Obviously, the mere fact that we are alive means that we are creating waste. Okay? By breathing in oxygen and breathing out CO2, we are polluting the air. Okay? The mere fact that we are alive. And if we get involved in economic activity, we produce things in factories. Factories produce. We use electricity. That's fossil fuels that we are burning. Okay? So a lot of pollution is caused by the fact that we are alive and we are participating in economic activities to produce the stuff that we need. All right. For example, there, domestic, industrial, and agricultural waste material that is being discharged into an environment at a rate faster than it can be absorbed or broken down. Obviously, pollution is a problem because we are putting waste into the environment. Obviously, certain things, nature degenerates them. They are like certain things are biodegradable. When we throw them away, they biodegrade. They become part of the soil again, part of the cycle. But it's the things like plastic, for example. It takes many, many years before it gets dissolved and absorbed back into nature. I don't think it ever does, right? So once we dump our waste into the environment at a faster rate than what it can be broken down and absorbed again back by nature, that is going to create pollution. All right. So, for example, if you throw away organic material, rotten fruit and stuff like that, that does not create pollution because it is broken down very quickly. Now, as it rots, it's broken down. The nutrient gets absorbed by the soil again and it's gone. All right, but the fact that we throw plastics and stuff like that, that is not biodegradable, that stays in nature for a long, long time, that is causing pollution. All right, so any waste, whether it's domestic waste, household waste, industrial waste, chemicals released by industries, agricultural waste, any waste material that is thrown into the environment, that we are dumping in the environment, that cannot be broken down very quickly, that is going to cause pollution. All right. Secondly, the gas emissions into the atmosphere. Obviously, this causes air pollution. The use of pesticides by farmers. Pesticides, by its very nature, is designed to kill things. All right, so when the farmers use pesticides to spray their crops to kill pests, little bugs and insects, obviously those pesticides are absorbed by the soil and it is harmful to the environment. Okay, yes, they have a reason for using it, but okay, it's not good. It has a harmful effect on the environment. And then lastly, also radioactive materials leaking into the environment. Whether radioactive materials very often comes from mining. Mining activities often releases radioactive materials into the environment, into the water, into the soil, which is obviously then harmful to the environment. Okay, now as I said, nature can take care of waste up to certain levels. So if we dispose of moderate amount of waste, obviously nature can deal with that. All right, it assimilates waste. Okay, for example, your solid waste through decomposition. When something decomposes, it breaks up and the little enzymes and stuff in it breaks down and it gets absorbed into the environment. But the problem is that the waste levels are so high, and some waste products, like I mentioned, plastic, is completely foreign to the natural environment. It cannot break it down. It doesn't decompose, so it doesn't get absorbed back into nature. It kind of just stays there. And then obviously it destroys the environment. The environment cannot cope with the amount of waste that we are dumping in it. All right. So pollution occurs. The sentence is also important. Okay. Pollution occurs when the waste resulting from human activity exceeds the natural environment's capacity to absorb it. So as I mentioned earlier, it will not be pollution if we pollute in moderate levels. Now, if we have a moderate amount of waste that we dispose of, and nature is able, through decomposition, to decompose the waste, to assimilate it and absorb it back into the nature, we would not have pollution. But we have pollution because the amount of waste that results from human activity is so large, so much. There's so much of it that the environment cannot decompose it fast enough. We keep adding and we keep adding and we keep adding, and then we are creating pollution. We are exceeding nature's ability to absorb it back into the environment through decomposition because there's just simply too much of it. All right. Now, pollution, we've spoken about negative externalities before. Obviously, pollution is a negative externality that goes hand in hand with the production of goods and services. Okay, basically, this means that pollution is an unfortunate negative consequence of our production and consumption. In any production process, there's a certain amount of pollution that will be caused. When we burn stuff, we're going to cause air pollution. If we are dumping dangerous chemicals, we are going to cause pollution, right? Any human activity, any production process obviously creates some degree of pollution, some more than others. Okay, there's big ones and there's smaller ones, right? But any production that takes place is going to cause, like by stuff, waste to be produced. In no factory takes inputs and uses absolutely everything. There's always waste products, and those waste has to be disposed of somehow. All right, and that obviously then will create pollution, which has a negative effect on the environment and also for the people that live in the vicinity. Okay, now the problem with externalities, we've had this discussion many times now. The problem is that the cost of the pollution, the cost of the negative externality is not carried by the producers. It doesn't affect their profits. Okay, they are not made to pay for the amount of pollution that they are causing. Okay, they get to pollute as much as what they want, and nobody actually charges them for the amount of pollution that they are producing. So they don't care, in essence, about the pollution that they are causing, all right, because they are not being made to pay. Okay, so there's no private cost for the producers when they cause pollution. So there's absolutely no incentive, no reason at all for them to want to decrease their pollution, because they get away with polluting as much as what they would like. All right. Obviously, government will have to intervene. Okay, they establish laws and policies to prevent pollution, to control the amount of pollution. We are going to focus on that later on in this chapter. All right. But if the market is left alone, if the government doesn't interfere, obviously any producer, they are not going to try and find ways to reduce their pollution. They are going to carry on happily polluting as much as what they like, because we don't make them pay for the pollution. It has negative effects, but we don't make them pay for those negative effects. And that's a market failure, like we discussed in chapter 8. So what is the relationship between technology and pollution? Okay, now in the past, when I started teaching economics, for example, we did not focus on environmental sustainability at all. Okay, it wasn't part of the economics syllabus, because in the past we pursued economic growth. The economics as a subject was focused on economic growth. How can we increase economic growth? How can we produce more and increase our productivity? How can we use our resources to produce more so that we can have economic growth? We didn't really concern ourselves with the negative externalities like pollution. All right. The only goal that we were focusing on was economic growth. Produce, to exploit the resources, produce as much as what we can so that the GDP can increase, so that we can have that economic growth. All right. So we weren't really concerned with the negative results of this increase in production. We didn't focus on environmental sustainability. We didn't look at negative externalities such as pollution. All right. An example there is the burning of fossil fuels. Most developed countries, most economies are run on fossil fuels. We run on petrol or diesel or electricity, and fossil fuels, oil, coal, is burned to generate electricity and to make petrol, etc., etc., right? And the burning of fossil fuels creates the majority of the air pollution in the world. All right. But we continued to burn the fossil fuels when the technology was there. We used the technology, we burn the fossil fuels, and we are not concerned with the high levels of carbon emissions that we are causing. All right. Obviously, that has changed now. Okay, in recent years, we have become more aware of how much damage pollution can cause to the environment. So there have been a lot of efforts to develop cleaner technologies. Clean technologies or green technologies is technology that we are implementing that has a lower level of toxic emissions. It has a lower impact on the environment. Its carbon footprint is less. All right. So obviously what we are trying to do is we're trying to come up with new technologies to replace the old technology. Old technology, we burnt the fossil fuels. We weren't concerned with any pollution that was caused. Nowadays, we try and make improvements to our technology. We do a lot of research to come up with new technology that has a less of an effect on the environment. All right. So technology can enable pollution to occur, but it can also provide a solution to the problem by finding technology that is less damaging to the environment. And that is our focus. All right. For example, petrol. Long ago, we had leaded petrol. All right, and the lead is poisonous. Lead kills people. So when they used leaded petrol, obviously the gases coming out of the cars was way more toxic. New technology now is that we use unleaded petrol. They've removed the lead out of the leaded petrol so that the gases released by the cars are less toxic. I'm not saying they're not toxic, they are still toxic, but one of the toxins we have been able to actually remove. Okay, so we are working on new technology all the time, so that we can relieve the pressure on the environment. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is just the different types of pollution. This obviously is also important. Okay, the first type of pollution we're going to look at is air pollution, right? So air pollution occurs when a toxic material is introduced into the atmosphere that is causing a change in the composition of air. In other words, we are making our air dirty. Our air is less clean. So air pollution is basically caused by substances such as soot. Okay, soot happens when that stuff is burnt. The black smoke that goes into the atmosphere, into the air, that contains soot. Soot is giving it that dark color, right? Dust. Okay, when dust is blowing into the air, it dirties the air. Okay, any solid particles of any kind, any gas, aerosols. Right, so every time that we put on deodorant, that is an aerosol. There's stuff in there that makes the can go psst, that is going into the air, that is causing air pollution. Any odorous substances, stuff with a bad smell. Tobacco smoke, when people are smoking and they're blowing that smoke into the air, it is causing air pollution. Exhaust fumes from cars, any kind of thing, whether it's a solid particle, whether it's a gas that we are releasing into the atmosphere, is causing air pollution. All right. Now, air pollution is a severe problem, especially in your larger cities, okay, around industrial areas, for example. All right, if you literally drive through Witbank, I think it's in Mpumalanga somewhere, I don't know, okay? But literally, if you drive on the highway past Witbank, you can smell the pollution in the air. All right, you can see it. The air is dirty. You can see the dirt in the air. Everything looks dirty, and you can physically smell the pollution in the air. All right, the negative consequences of air pollution, okay, is poor health. Okay, obviously, people that breathe in dirty air, those dirty air goes into our lungs, right? So according to the World Health Organization, air pollution can be linked to a variety of health conditions like asthma and lung cancer. All right. In our area, here on the West Rand, long ago, years and years ago, they used to mine there by West Rand Cons, there between Krugersdorp and Randfontein. They used to do a lot of mining, gold mining. And that mine dump that is still there, it's like an iconic thing in the West Rand. You can see the mine dump, and I come almost home, right? But that mine dump has not been rehabilitated properly. The grass is not growing all over it. Okay, they're also recycling it to see if there's any gold left in the dump or whatever, right? But all that stuff, that sand and stuff there, is in the air. When the wind blows on the West Rand, it blows the sand off that mine dump, and that mine dump contains chemicals that they used in the mining. It contains radioactive material. Okay, uranium occurs in nature with gold. All right, so that mine dump is actually a toxic heap of stuff. All right, and on the West Rand, statistically, we can see there's a higher incidence here of respiratory diseases, breathing diseases like asthma, whatever, sinus problems, whatever, and it's as a result of the mine dump. It's as a result of the air pollution in our area. All right, so it causes all kinds of respiratory problems, breathing type of problems, because air is something that we breathe in. So if we breathe in clean air, great. If we breathe in polluted air, it is going to create a problem. All right. Air pollution also creates the greenhouse gas. This is where global warming is coming from. Okay, obviously the gases, the greenhouse gases that goes up into the atmosphere, it traps heat within the Earth's atmosphere, so heat cannot escape. Okay, heat cannot escape out of the atmosphere into space. Because the greenhouse gases is within our atmosphere, it creates almost like an umbrella, and the heat cannot escape through this umbrella, which is then obviously creating global warming. All right, so the accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is causing the average temperature on Earth to rise. Now, over time, obviously, okay? So global warming, there's a lot of people that don't believe in global warming, okay? But if you literally do a study and you look at the highest temperatures experienced during summer times in different areas of the country, you can physically see that the maximum temperatures in a specific area is increasing slowly over time. Now, 1 degree at a time, slowly, right? But this causes climate change, which disrupts agricultural production and threatens ecosystems. Okay, when there's climate change, farmers are not entirely sure anymore when the planting season is supposed to be, when the harvesting season is supposed to be. Okay, it messes with nature's systems. All right. It also leads to natural disasters like tsunamis and hurricanes. They have directly been linked. They're happening more and more often because of global warming. Because the earth is getting warmer and warmer, and that is creating natural disasters to happen way more often. Okay, another problem that is caused by air pollution is the ozone depletion. Okay, the ozone layer is a layer surrounding our atmosphere that prevents the harmful rays of the sun to come through. Okay, obviously, the sun is extremely hot. If we would go close to the sun, we would like burn almost instantly, right? We would just disintegrate, burst into flames, right? But the ozone layer is at the top of our atmosphere that protects us from the harmful rays of the sun. All right. Now, with all these dangerous gases and all this air pollution in the atmosphere, it is damaging our ozone layer. It's making it thinner and thinner, so it is not able to protect us against the rays of the sun anymore. So more and more of the harmful rays of the sun can come through that ozone layer, right? And that is obviously contributing to the problem of global warming, okay? Because the more sun rays comes through, the hotter it is going to be. All right. You can see this literally, like, I don't know, when I was your age, we could go into the sun for extended period of time and maybe not burn as badly. But now, if we go into the sun without putting on suntan lotion, whatever, we burn, eh? White people like me, we burn like red. We look like flippin' Coke can when we go into the sun. We burn blisters. It's because of the more harmful rays that is now coming through that ozone. It is hotter, eh? It's more dangerous. The sun is becoming more dangerous because we are losing that ozone layer. It's becoming thinner and thinner. All right. And that happens as a result of air pollution, especially carbon monoxide pollution. All right. And then the last problem that is a result of air pollution is acid rain. All right. Now, what happens here is when acidic chemicals, like sulfur dioxide, that's released into the air by factories, right? Factories do what they do. We produce stuff, mining, whatever. And these acidic chemicals are released into the air to create pollution. What happens then, it goes into the air, it mixes up there in the atmosphere, it mixes with rain, snow, fog, mist, or whatever. And when those gases react with the rainwater, they produce acid rain. So when it rains, it is not rainwater that is raining down. It will be the acid rain. Okay, the raindrops basically will contain acid, which obviously then damages crops, the trees, the buildings, contaminates our drinking water. We can't drink that. It burns human skin. Obviously, it hurts the animals. All right, we need rain. Rain is supposed to be a good thing. Rain coming back down, the condensation, all those raindrops falling back to earth, that is supposed to replenish our water resources. But when there's so much chemicals in the air that it combines, it reacts with the rainwater. When it rains, that rainwater is physically harmful to nature. It damages the crops, buildings, people, animals, because it contains these acidic chemicals. Now, it's not pure rainwater. It is very, very damaging. Right, so that is your air pollution. Okay, if we look at water pollution, okay, what is water pollution? There's your definition. Okay, water pollution happens when anything goes into our water. Any foreign object goes into the water that we use, whatever water, for drinking water, whatever we use it for. All right. So when industrial effluent, so stuff, chemicals, any waste that comes from industries, agricultural waste, mining waste, sewage, any household waste is introduced into fresh or ocean water. So for example, if our straws, if we drink plastic straws and we put the plastic straws in the garbage and somehow that straw ends up in the sea, that is creating water pollution. If there's a sewage leak and the sewage leaks into a river, that is water pollution. If industries dump their waste into the water, that is water pollution. All right. Now, obviously, the chemical composition of water is altered when we introduce toxic substances, and then the quality of the water deteriorates. The water no longer will be safe to drink, for example. Okay. And as water becomes toxic, everything that lives in the water is at risk. All right. So if there's a huge amount of human sewage that leaks into a dam, that sewage is going to kill all the plant life in the dam. It's going to kill all the fishies in the dam, the birds around the dam, right? All organisms living in and around the water is going to be affected by that. They're going to die. Now they're either going to get sick and die, or they're just going to die. Okay, and also very important that water becomes unsuitable for drinking purposes and irrigation. All right, because what's going to happen is if sewage leaks into the water and the farmer uses the water to irrigate his crops, he wets his crops, he makes the crops grow, those dangerous toxic things goes into the crops. We buy the crops, we eat it, and we're going to get sick because the water was absorbed by the fruit or the vegetables or whatever that we are then consuming. All right. Now, obviously, water pollution is a big, big problem. It is a great health risk for many people who are using untreated water from rivers and ponds and dams for drinking and washing purposes because they don't have access to municipal clean water. Okay, remember in chapter 11, we spoke about who has access to clean water. Water from a river or a dam, whatever, is not having access to water. So if water in dams and rivers become polluted because of chemicals, because of human sewage, whatever, plastics, whatever, and there are people that rely on that source of water for drinking or washing purposes, we are severely compromising those people's health. I spoke about years ago in the Cape somewhere, there was a massive outbreak of cholera where the drinking and the water that people were consuming, poor people were consuming, was contaminated with human sewage, and people got cholera. They didn't have access to healthcare, and a huge amount of people died. All right. Water pollution also, as I mentioned, harms the water animals. Okay, so fishes, insects, birds that live around the water area, around the dam, around the river, and any plant. And that leads to biodiversity losses. Okay, we'll talk about later in this chapter what biodiversity means. It means basically the variety of animal and plant life that can be found in an area. Now, how many different species of plants, how many different species of animals and birds and fishes do we find in an area? Now, when water becomes polluted, obviously animals, plants, fishes, birds in the area will die as a result of the water pollution. And that will decrease the variety of animal and plant life that is available, which means that we are losing biodiversity. Right, in terms of land pollution, okay, there's your definition. The first dotted key, now you highlight that. Okay, what is land pollution? Land pollution is going to happen when any waste material, whether it's domestic waste, household waste, municipal waste, or industrial waste from businesses, is dumped onto the land. All right. So when you throw your papers on the field, that is land pollution. All right. Now, what is bad about this is it changes again the chemical composition of the soil. Okay, because the soil absorbs this waste material that we are dumping, and it's basically making the land, the soil, toxic. All right. And same as with the water pollution, when the soil becomes toxic, all the organisms that naturally occur in the soil will be killed and nothing can grow in that soil. Okay, so all the little insects that lives in the soil will die, okay, because the soil is now toxic. And when we try to plant things in the soil, things are not going to grow, because the soil is toxic. Plants, grass, fruits, vegetables, nothing is going to be able to grow on that land, in that soil. Okay, now the causes of land pollution, okay, poor agricultural practices, okay, we'll talk about that more. Increased mineral exploitation, mining creates a lot of chemical waste that needs to be disposed of. Industrial waste dumping, again, industries, businesses that dump their waste somewhere. Okay, if they don't dump it in a river, they dump it in the land somewhere. And then indiscriminate disposal of urban waste. Now, when people randomly just dump their household waste in an open felt somewhere, instead of going to the municipal landfill, where they actually control the disposal of the waste. All right, land pollution, okay, if we look at poor agricultural practices, for example, weed killers and pesticides. Now, I said before, the farmers make use of the pesticides to kill the insects so that they won't eat their crops, but the pesticides or the weed killers, it goes into the soil, it gets absorbed into the soil, and slowly but surely it damages the soils and it makes the soil toxic. All right, the main types of land pollution, okay, the solid and hazardous waste, and then soil erosion. Right, we'll talk about soil erosion more later. Okay, now solid and hazardous waste, this happens in cities particular, where there's more people concentrated in an area. So more people comes obviously with more waste. The more households there are, the more municipal waste there will be. There's more packets and boxes and plastic bags and straws and stuff that gets thrown away because there's more people in the cities, right? And uncollected refuse and garbage dumped in public areas, that can cause severe health problems. Right, now specifically in your informal settlements where the waste is not necessarily collected by the municipality, you will normally see that everybody tends to throw their rubbish on one heap right there where the people are staying. All right, so the people are basically living in their own waste. All right, they're literally putting all of their household waste. I'm not talking sewage, né? Household waste, the boxes, the plastic, the uneaten food, that kind of stuff. It gets thrown onto a heap right there in the area where people stay. And that can cause severe health problems. And obviously the stench that goes along with it, né? Garbage never smells nice. If it's your chore at home to take out the garbage, you will know it stinks, né? And we don't, there's specific reason why there's garbage removal is they take it away, né? We don't dispose of waste in a residential area because of the health problems that it can cause and because of the stench. People don't want to live with the stench. So the municipal trucks come, they take the waste and they remove it to an area that is removed from the residential area, and they dump it there where they can then treat it and get and dispose of it responsibly. Okay, but in areas where there's no collection of waste, obviously this is a serious problem. People just dump it, and then they have to live with the waste and the stench that goes along with that. Okay, in terms of soil erosion, okay, that refers to the loss of topsoil resulting from deforestation or flooding of productive farmland. Okay, now there's different layers of soil. Okay, the bio people will know. The soil comes in different layers. Your top layer is the most fertile layer. All right. So when we chop down the trees, right, when we plant stuff on soil, the roots of the stuff that we are planting, it's keeping the soil there. So when it rains, the plant's roots and stuff keeps the soil there. It prevents it from being washed away. But when we do deforestation, we chop down all the trees, right? Now, and the plants, we take all the plants and stuff out. Now there's no roots anymore to keep the topsoil in its place. So when it's flooding, when there's like hard rain or whatever, as the rain floods through the area, the top layer of soil gets washed away into the rivers, ultimately into the sea, and it's gone. All right. So basically then the fertile part of the soil is getting less and less and less, right? So it's important that we leave the trees, that we have enough trees, that we plant stuff, we plant the grass, we plant crops, whatever, on the soil so that the soil can stay there where it's supposed to be and it doesn't wash away when it rains. Okay, where there's soil erosion, as I said, nothing grows. Okay, if that valuable fertile soil is gone, the soil is basically dead and nothing is going to grow there ever again. Okay, last thing for this lesson is the disposal of toxic or hazardous waste. Okay, hazardous waste or toxic waste is when the stuff that we are disposing of is dangerous. Now, it's harmful to human health. All right. So it's also known as hazardous waste because it's dangerous, right? This happens particularly in the form of land pollution. Okay, so when we leave stuff on the land, and obviously this is a challenge for both developed and developing countries. Again, the more people there are, the more waste we are going to produce. All right. So toxic waste is any poisonous byproduct. Now, it's only toxic if it is harmful to human or animal health. All right, then it's called toxic or hazardous waste. Okay, it can come as a result of manufacturing from industries. It can come as a result of farming. The pesticides, obviously, sewage, human sewage is toxic. Construction sites, garages, laboratories, hospitals, anything that is harmful to human health. These are the sources of toxic waste. All right. Now, toxic waste is normally dumped or buried underground, okay, because it's harmful to human health. So they dig a hole and they bury it under the ground, but it contaminates the soil that is buried in, and all of those dangerous chemicals leaks down into the soil, into the underground water supplies. So it also creates water pollution. There's the underground water supplies is where our drinking water sometimes comes from. All right. So when it goes into the soil, it goes deeper down, it goes all the way down into the underground water supplies. Obviously, that is extremely dangerous if people consume that water eventually. It has devastating consequences. All right. Hospital waste, for example, is if with the needles. Okay, they can't just put the needles and dump it there with the municipal waste, right? Because those needles were entered into people, they contaminate with the blood, it could carry HIV, whatever, right? Bloodied plasters and whatever, anything that comes out of a hospital that is potentially dangerous to human health, right? Most countries have strict laws and regulations regarding exactly how to dispose of toxic waste. Because it is so very, very potentially harmful, there are specific laws that govern how these people need to dispose of their toxic waste. Right, and as I said, it can be anybody. It doesn't have to be hospitals. It can be a factory if they produce dangerous chemicals that they need to dispose of. The farmers, the pesticides and stuff. Ne? Sewage is dangerous. Okay, any human waste, ne? Whether it's blood, whether it's whatever, is potentially toxic. And it has to be disposed of in a certain way to minimize the risk to the health of people and animals and the soil and the water and the whatever. All right. So hazardous waste, obviously this can cause literally air pollution, can cause soil pollution, underground, like water pollution. Depends obviously on what kind of the waste is and where it is going to be dumped. All right. But it is only toxic waste if it is poisonous, potentially harmful to the health of people or animals, etc., etc. Okay, I'm going to stop here for now.